Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into a massive, kind of mind-bending thought experiment. We are talking about the absolute biological necessity of the day and night cycle. We're going to explore the hidden science of darkness, how life on Earth barely hangs on during extreme seasons, and what all of this means for the literal billions of alien planets out there in the cosmos. So let's get into it.
Section 1, A World Without Night. Let's set the stakes here. I want you to imagine a scenario where, starting today, right now, the sun never sets again. No matter how many hours pass, the Earth remains bathed in this brilliant, relentless sunlight 24/7. Could human, plant, and animal life actually survive this? Or are we, entirely dependent on the dark? The immediate fallout wouldn't just be a bit of mild insomnia for a few days. We're talking total ecosystem chaos. City skylines would never dim. Our bodies would completely lose their internal clocks, and we'd be scrambling to build heavily sealed artificial night zones in our homes just to survive the psychological and physical toll. It would be an absolute nightmare, ironically enough. Moving on to Section 2, the biology of darkness. To really get why endless light is so destructive, we have to look at the deeply ingrained science here. So it turns out plants actually use the length of the night, not the day, to anticipate seasons and survive. They do this using a specific compound called phytochrome. During the day, sure, they use sunlight for photosynthesis, but it's exclusively in the darkness of night that they regenerate this phytochrome compound. It's basically an internal timer that tells them when to drop their leaves, when to go dormant, and when their seeds should germinate. No dark, no timer. This really perfectly highlights the delicate balance of our food supply. Take long-day plants, things like spinach and lettuce. Too much light causes them to what's called bolt. They prematurely produce flower heads, which makes the edible leaves incredibly tough and basically ruins your salad. On the flip side, for short-day plants like strawberries or poinsettias, light acts as an inhibitor. If they're exposed to waste light and don't get uninterrupted darkness, they literally will never bloom. And no blooms means no fruit. Without night, our agriculture just completely collapses. For the animal kingdom, darkness dictates behavior through something called Aschoff's rule. This is a principle of behavioral physiology that tells us light intake fundamentally suppresses sleep and promotes activity in diurnal, daytime animals. In a world of constant bright light, daytime animals would be biologically forced to stay active far past their physical limits. They'd basically be running themselves to pure exhaustion. And for us humans, the crucial point is that darkness triggers the creation of melatonin, which we absolutely need for cellular repair and immune function. Rest is so biologically critical that scientific data shows patients who get vaccines in the morning actually generate more antibodies than those who get them in the afternoon. Why? Simply because their immune systems are freshly rested from a good night's sleep. Without darkness to trigger that rest, our immune systems would be totally shot. Let's hit Section 3, Surviving the Midnight Sun. Let's look at a real-world example of how humans actually cope in extreme polar regions, where the sun doesn't set or rise for months at a time. We have to use some seriously extreme engineering to survive the polar day and polar night. Take Rechek in Norway. It's a town trapped in winter darkness for half the year, and they actually built 3 massive 17-square-meter mirrors on a mountain peak just to bounce a tiny fraction of sunlight down onto their town square. Crazy, right? And during the endless summer of the midnight sun, cities completely flip their lifestyle. They rely on intense blackout curtains and embrace 24-hour tourism. Think of the famous White Nights Festival in St. Petersburg, where the streets are just packed with music and art because the sky absolutely refuses to get dark. But even with blackout curtains and giant mirrors, we still have to trick our biology. A really fascinating 2009 study out of Concordia University showed that exposing polar residents to specific blue-tinted light therapy helps regulate their brain's serotonin and melatonin. They slept longer, they felt less tired. It proves that when the natural sky isn't cooperating, we have to artificially hack our circadian rhythms just to fight off seasonal affective disorder. Okay, Section 4, Animals under constant sunlight. We can build mirrors and light clinics, sure, but how does wildlife handle the midnight sun up north? Listen to this quote from ornithologist Bob Brumley. He was observing birds during a solar eclipse. He said the moment the sky went dark, the birds instantly dove into the bushes to sleep. Then, when the sun came back 10 minutes later, they popped right back out and started singing again. It perfectly captures how tightly animal behavior is tethered to light.
Under the actual midnight sun, male birds basically never sleep. They just sing 24 hours a day to claim their territory.
Nocturnal animals face an even bigger hurdle. When researcher Jen Tallarico tracked little brown bats in the Yukon, she found their window of darkness is so incredibly short during the summer that their nights turn into these nonstop, desperate feeding frenzies. They literally shift their diet to hunt spiders instead of flying insects, and they hug the tight, dark spaces of the dense forest just to avoid the sun. In fact, these specific bats have evolved a smaller mass and shorter wingspans specifically so they can navigate those dense, shadowy areas.
But honestly, the most incredible biological adaptation might just belong to Eurasian reindeer. They physically change their eye color to survive the extreme light shifts. No joke. In the endless sunlight of summer, their eyes turn gold to reflect intense light directly through the retina. But in the dim, dark winter, their eyes change to a deep blue, which scatters the limited light through more photoreceptors to radically increase their visual sensitivity. It is just a breathtaking adaptation to extreme light and dark. Section 5, Tidally Locked Alien Worlds. Let's blast off from Earth for a minute and take this whole thought experiment to a massive cosmic scale. So in our Milky Way galaxy alone, 70% of all the stars are what we call M-dwarfs. These are cooler and a bit smaller than our sun. And according to astronomical surveys, a staggering 41% of these M-dwarf stars have orbiting planets. That brings us to this gigantic number, 28.7 billion. That is the estimated amount of planets sitting squarely in the habitable Goldilocks zones around those M-dwarf stars. Tens of billions of planets that could potentially hold liquid water and support life. But there is a massive catch. Because these so-called mini-Earths orbit so close to their relatively cool stars, the intense gravity locks them in place. This is called being tidally locked. Basically, it means the planet never actually spins on its axis relative to the star. 1 year equals exactly 1 day. And that creates a stark, honestly terrifying planetary divide. One entire half of the globe is a permanent, blistering desert of light constantly facing the star. The other half, an eternal, freezing block of night facing out into the dark void of space. It's a world literally split right down the middle between endless day and endless night. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Redefining Life and Sleep. This is the ultimate question about astrobiology and life beyond Earth. Think about it. If humans rely entirely on darkness for immunity, if plants need it to grow, and if animals are out here physically changing their eye colors just to survive the seasons, how does life function on a world where the sun never, ever moves? Scientists theorize that alien life on these M-Earths would be vastly different from us. Their biological clocks might be totally independent of light. Maybe they're triggered by internal temperature changes or the shifting winds across that crazy planetary border between hot and cold. They might live entirely in subterranean caves or deep ocean vents to avoid the surface extremes altogether, kind of like the blind fish in Earth's deepest caves. They might not even breathe oxygen, maybe relying on methane or carbon dioxide respiration to survive those harsh environments. It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? We've seen how remarkably adaptable Earth biology can be, from bats hunting in the midnight sun to humans building giant mirrors on mountains just to catch a single ray of light. If life finds a way here, what entirely different, sleepless ecosystems are out there thriving in the cosmos right now, staring into a sun that never sets? Well, that's going to do it for this explainer. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the universe around you.